It was chance, not choice, that made me human instead of an amoeba or a blade of grass. I had nothing to do with it. Marty Rubin. Bending, Not Breaking. Season 6, Episode 9. The Stakeout. And welcome back to another episode of Bending Not Breaking. I'm Sunshine.
And I'm Ben.
And we are here to talk more about The Legend of Korra.
Yeah, we've been talking about the Korra a lot.
Because it's great.
Yeah.
And I'm firmly on the side of it is better than Avatar The Last Airbender at this point.
Ooh, shots
That's
fired.
not that that's bad, because it's clearly not. We clearly love it.
Yeah.
But I think I'm at a point in my life where I think Korra is the better show.
I don't not agree.
You don't not agree.
Yeah.
So you agree.
Yeah.
Okay, great. Cool.
Love the double negative.
Well, it's been just the two of us.
Just the two of us.
Yep. On this podcast, we have yet to build any sandcastles specifically in the sky. But we've got a guest today.
We do.
Ben, who do we have with us?
Y'all, you know this person. You love this person. They've been a guest before.
Friend of the podcast.
They're a friend of the pod. They're wonderful. They are fully equipped to discuss this episode because they've done a lot of school in a similar program as me. They went to, divinity school. They went to school and got their master's in social work. And now they're a PhD candidate. Ladies, friends, gentlemen, gentlemen, we are ready for you to meet Indhira Udofia. Indhira, how are you today?
Well, I'm almost a candidate. I'm almost there. We got maybe about 2 months of me doing defense, and then I can call myself that officially. But hey, y'all!
I jumped the gun.
I'm just gonna
I
needed that kick I needed that kick to get me over the finish line. You have no idea.
Sometimes it's nice to hear like that phrasing, be like, "Oh, yes, I am," or I will be very shortly.
So soon. We like to be hopeful about the near future. It's good to have things to look forward to. We talked about that in a recent episode.
Listen, it's all manifestation. We're manifesting.
We are manifesting. I'm manifesting for you. I want this for you. This is great.
Yeah, me too.
Yeah.
But hey, everyone.
We got to be confident, but not overconfident, right? That's what we're going to talk about today. Right? We're going to talk about
that. Perfect segue.
Indhira, you picked a lens for this episode. What lens did you choose?
Hubris.
Hubris.
I danced between hubris and confidence, and I think this will come up in our discussion today because, it was like, when does confidence become hubris? And I think this episode does a really good job of dancing the line between what happens when we get overly confident.
Yeah.
And so, yeah.
Here.
There's definitely some moments that I picked out.
One or two.
Well, but before we get to those, Ben, you have the task today.
I do.
Of recapping this episode.
I'm so excited.
In 30 seconds.
I got this.
Are you ready?
I was born ready.
That's that confidence we love. Hopefully, I don't know, maybe that will turn into hubris. Who knows? Let's see where you land on this. 30 seconds on the clock, and away we go.
Yeah, so Team Avatar searches for Highway. They find him, and then they stake him out in the Misty Palms Oasis after Bolin gives some Nuktuk autographs. And then Lin is mad at Suyin as usual, and then Bolin loses a lot of Pai Sho to the strategy queen Asami, and Korra gets impatient and chases Highway into the spirit world, and then his soul is evicted to eternal suffering by Zahir. Korra and Zahir have a nice, lovely chat about the Red Lotus while Gazan and Minghua dominate Mako and Bolin.
5 seconds left.
Asami escapes with Korra, only to be caught by the Earth Queen.
Bingo. Well done.
I mean,
wow.
That was well done.
I'm just saying
that might be the best recap you've ever done.
I mean,
wow.
I don't want to sound egotistical or overconfident or cocky or full of hubris, but
sounds like you're defining it. So let's officially define it. What is hubris?
I mean, Indhira, do you want to define it, or do you...
So we can do Webster's dictionary's definition, and then I'll tell you a little bit about what I think. But hubris is excessive pride or self-confidence,
Yeah.
or pertaining to excessive pride towards or defiance of the gods, leading to nemesis. I would say, right, that that's a big part of it. A part of it is this excessive nature of feeling confident. And I would say excessively prideful to the point of moving towards the point of like illogic, like not moving in logic, like you're not thinking about other possibilities, you know. Yeah. So just being too big for your britches.
Yeah, I think that's a good connotative way to think about it. It's just you're being too big for your britches here.
Yeah.
I think for
Or
me,
like I kept saying, you got too much dip on your chip. Like, it's just like,
that's too much.
It's like too much. You go in for the queso, and if you put too much, if it's too heavy, it's gonna break. Totally making your, like, that's what I think hubris turns into. It's over investing or overthinking the moves that you're making.
Ever gonna think of like snapping a chip in dip because I tried to get too much, and as that is now the metaphor in my head for hubris for the rest of my life.
Yeah, like I think the second definition you provided is really interesting for me. It has, I mean, so etymologically it has Greek roots, and it's in defiance of the gods, right? So back in that time, it was used in that way. And think about like Icarus and Daedalus flying too close to the sun. Like you had some little bit of hubris there, buddy. Like you're in defiant of these beings that are so powerful that they control the world. And I think that's really interesting when you put it in today's context and with, God and religion and all of the things that are there spiritually, where if you believe in God and you believe that God is omnipotent and all powerful and everywhere and omniscient and all the things, all the omnis, then all of a sudden claiming hubris is claiming astronomical amounts of confidence to the point of like you think you're going to rule the world. And
yeah,
that's an interesting thing to consider, I think.
Yeah. I mean, I think you have a good thing that you're pointing out, and this is something that I think we can talk a little bit more about, right? It's like when you have high confidence and strong conviction, how quickly do you get to hubris if you're not careful? Like it's very easy to kind of lose the main plot of why you do certain things when you have that kind of like overconfidence mixed with this high level of conviction that there's only one way to like be and exist. And I think that shows up a lot. And it often is the thing that undoes, certain types of ideologies and belief structures that may have had a point.
Yup. Well, I mean, you're alluding to it and dancing around it. Let's go straight in. Let's dive in. What are some of those moments that you're referencing? I'd love to. Let's do it.
Yeah. So I think the major one, let's talk a little bit about like Zahir and Iway, right? Like I think that the plan, right, had a lot of hubris to begin with, that I'm the only one who can kind of infiltrate the city and they were almost successful, right? But
they were
didn't
so
take
close.
Right. But they didn't take into account other people's strengths or things that could have possibly went wrong, right? Like the perceptiveness of it, even Iway being in the spirit world, like, well, no one followed me. I destroyed all the evidence. Like you didn't think that going up against the avatar that they, Korra may have some extra about her and this team of people that has surrounded her, including a detective. Like, you don't think that they would have thought to go after you, given how precocious Korra is? I think that there was a lot of assumptions that are constantly being made. And again, strong convictions around their beliefs centered around the Red Lotus, high confidence that their way is the only way that can make it, showed up in this really way where Iway gets yeeted into the spiritual void.
Sure does.
Well, and to me, one of the things that blows my mind in this episode is if I am on the run from the Avatar, I'm probably not going to go take a stroll around the city that I'm hiding in to like go get a snack. You know what I mean? Things that like he's just walking around this town and grabbing food
Well,
and like that's the thing I wouldn't be if I was in hiding and I think I got to a place where I wasn't seen. I'm then not going to like all right, let's meander. Let's explore a little bit. Let's treat this like a vacation.
Or not let me not make a name for myself by insulting the people who are hiding me, right?
Correct,
like
right. Yeah, hey, this dude with a nose ring really thinks a lot about himself. Oh, yeah, he insulted me. He called me a liar. Yep, that's the guy. Like, cool.
Yeah, so one of the things that I'm hearing that's tied to this hubris is this assumption. There's like the word assumption has been thrown around a few times, and how when we are overconfident to the point of hubris, what we have done is we have assumed too much or too little of either ourselves or the person we're considering. And in Iway's case, it sounds like he has assumed that his methods are so thorough that there is no possible way that he can be followed, right? So it's either an over-assumption of himself or an under-assumption of Korra and Korra Team Avatar, or maybe a little bit of both. And I'm curious for either of you if there's a leaning for you. Is Iway so full of himself that he thinks he's incredible, or is he thinks so little of Team Avatar that he thinks there's no possible way that could get to him? Does that make sense? Or is there another option?
I think it's more of the second than the first. I think it's a both and. But I think what makes it hubris, right, is the diminishing of the belief and the value of the other party that you're engaging with, that you think you know better, you can do better, you are better than the other person, and you will best that other person, right? It's like you can't have overconfident. I think the line between like, just having a high sense of like self-esteem and confidence and hubris is the act of diminishing the other party that's implicated in your actions.
Yeah, I really like that distinction, because overconfidence and hubris can be intermingled in common parlance, right? But if we throw in that aspect of hubris is when you're thinking less of the other person and they are being diminished, that's what makes it hubris. That feels like it gives it a little bit more of a sinister aspect to it, but it also rings true for this, again, second definition of in defiance of the gods, right? When I'm
to the point of bringing a nemesis.
Else, yeah, exactly. Exactly. Yes. I love that.
Yeah.
Yeah, it always landed for me that Iway just thinks very highly of himself. I can tell when people are lying. I'm this official. I can hide my Jeep behind one rock and think that no one's going to find it ever. And props to Naga. We don't get enough love for Naga.
We get a lot of Naga in this episode.
It's her. I mean, Naga's used as a tool in this episode. I don't think Naga ever gets the personality that they deserve throughout this show. But yeah, I'm gonna hide my Jeep behind a rock. Cool deal. No one's gonna find me. I'm gonna go stroll through town. I'm gonna go meet with the person, with the leader of the Red Lotus that I just failed and not expect for me to get thrown into Spirit of Forgotten Souls or the
Yeet.
And so like I think I've always disliked Iway. So I'm assuming the worst. But there's also, because that moment where Iway is talking to Zahir and Korra just yells Zahir as she's in hiding. Like, I think there is a little hubris there as well in this, like, I can go after her and take on this person who has really proven to be a menace, and stay out of our reach and is able to get and almost kidnap me, and I'm going to go take on this person one-on-one in the spirit world. Seems like a bold choice.
I'm so glad you said that, because as much as I stand my Queen Korra, bisexual icon extraordinaire, just overall baddie, we speak your name and we love you. She had so much hubris in this episode.
Right.
To be fair, all the time. Like, this is a constant struggle for her.
Yeah, and I think that and again, it goes back to this idea of power, right? And what we think about our perceived power and how that then shapes and shifts, right? How we diminish the worth of others. Like, there were multiple ways in which she had been cautioned, right? To kind of, let's dial it back, right? Or let's slow it down. You don't have to kick the door down and you don't have to jump headfirst in the spirit world. Like, you still don't really know all that there is to know about the spirit world. You're still kind of learning that space too. How do you not expect that someone may have more mastery of a skill that you struggle with, that you're going up against, right? If this person sets up a conference in the spirit world, first of all, didn't know you could do that, just set appointments to, link up at a random spot in a spirit realm. So if someone can do that, and you're barely figuring out that landscape and the relationships between the spirits and, all that, why would you not presume that they may have more mastery around being in the midst of both worlds than you?
Well, because he can teleport is what we learn, which is, again, a thing I didn't know you could do in the spirit world, is just kind of like teleport from one side to the other in the spirit world with control. Which is a new thing. And I also don't love that she decides to sit in the same like hotel room as Ai Wei in that moment too. Like, if we like go somewhere else and just maybe the door next door. Like, I just don't. It seems like a weird choice to me to be like, I'm gonna teleport. I'm gonna stay here right next to this dude we're trying to capture, who's linked up with these other baddies. Seems like, at least afterwards, and hindsight might be 2020, but that also seems like a bold move.
Yeah, because what would have happened if you both woke up in the same room? Like, there just wasn't a lot of fleshed out plans.
Well,
other than I can get it.
I can defend that, I think, because I think Asami, Bolin, and Mako are in that room with Korra, right? I wonder if that's just having faith and trust in her friends and knowing that the three of them are likely capable of taking Ai Wei on. So that's something I can get behind. The thing that I want to circle back to is what you said, Indira, is Korra's hubris is really interesting to consider because she has been grappling with being super talented and powerful her entire life, has gotten beaten and bested by Amon, and then won. So, like, okay, I really am good at this. Like, maybe some humility learned there, and then beaten and bested by Unalaq, and then won with Janora's help. So you would think there's a little bit more humility there. And then what we're going to see is that she's going to get to this point, has always come out on top. And so I wonder if this idea of being constantly the winner is giving her a false sense of, I can always assume that I'm going to win and come out on top. And we know that after this season, that's not necessarily true. But I'm just curious about that, because it feels like this is learned behavior rather than... I don't know about I don't know if I have a finishing way to finish that thought. It feels like this is learned behavior.
No, and I do think so, right? So it's a positive reinforcement, right, of a negative behavioral trait. And so when we think about the things that we do, right, if we have this belief structure, right, that's then followed up by our actions, and we are rewarded for impulsivity, we're rewarded for kind of, the fact that, like, we're always going to come out on top. It's very easy to then create a pattern behavior of just kind of running into burning buildings and expecting not to get burned every time, right? And it only takes one negative experience to kind of shift you back to a reality. And I think what has happened is that the more that, while things do turn out okay, they do come at a cost, right? As we are evident, as Zahir is kind of talking through the fullness of his plan in the spirit world, and then like kind of names like, we're going to have to take you out to kill the avatar as a entity, right? Like, you will always be a liability, and the avatar itself will be a liability. So we kind of just want to, like, knock you off now so we don't have to worry about what does it mean for that to continue, right?
Yeah.
And I think that's the first time in which that reality became something that was like, oh, I really messed up. Like, oh, I didn't think about the fact that like there may be a time where like the things that I have relied on may not be the things that I can continue to rely on.
Yeah, it's interesting to me. There's a moment in this episode, especially after the Red Lotus almost gets her out of Zaofu, for her to jump in there, because I think there is a hubris of her underestimating Zahir's abilities. Here's a group that snuck into Zaofu, found a way in, even with all of these guards, even with 7, 8, 10 master benders around her.
The safest city in the world.
She was still almost kidnapped, and completely knocked out. And then she seems very surprised that he tricked her. Which is like that was like the one moment where she's like, "You tricked me," and I just wanted to be like,
but she wasn't awake for that,
yeah?
So she couldn't fight back, right?
Well, but that's what it's like, where she's like, "You tricked me," and I'm like, like, yeah, the villain did a villain thing, so like,
right?
There's a little bit of like her clearly not expecting that this person who's proven to be a master strategist, he's infiltrated the air temple, they've gotten into Zaofu, and she's still surprised that they were able to find her next to Aiwei in the real world. Is still mind-boggling to me that was something that was so surprising to her, and I think it is that hubris of diminishing his capabilities and the Red Lotus's capabilities, which is that's a moment to me. I have to keep from laughing. I chuckle every time I watch it, where she's just like, "You tricked me," and I'm just like, "Yeah, that's right."
Yeah, because that's what they do. They trick you.
That's
like
what villains do.
And I think the converse happens as well. So, I think everyone diminishes everyone for the sake of their own delusions.
Yeah.
And I wonder if that's a thing like that because, is it a confidence thing? Is it a self-talk thing of wanting to be good at something? And so just this natural ability of like, when I play a video game, I want to be better than the person next to me. When I do this workout, I want to do it faster than the person next to me. And I'm curious how much like that just kind of plays in. So, here I am fighting the Avatar. I need to prove that I'm a better strategist or a better fighter. And I'm telling myself stories to make that true for whatever reason, whether that's because I need to have confidence to do this thing or because I genuinely need to prove I'm better than that individual. And I wonder how that bleeds into how we navigate life. Yeah, I don't know.
Yeah, I think then I was to say, I think that there's something to be said, right? I think everybody wants to believe, especially if it's something that they truly desire, something that they're going for. People want to believe that they have the capacity to win, right? Like, if the converse is true and there's a lack of self-esteem, right, it makes it very difficult for you to, one, believe in possibility, but also act on that possibility. So I don't think it's necessarily that confidence inherently. It's not the confidence. I think the reason why I'm saying like maybe hubris is a better name for what we see displayed in like multiple areas, right, is that it comes at the cost of acknowledging risk, right? Yeah. Like I can be confident and believe in my ability and still acknowledge that there's a potential or there are risks associated with me gaining whatever victory or advantage I'm trying to seek.
Yeah, I think
the same does not go into place with hubris.
Yeah, I think that's the deal for me. Also, thinking about there are so many other instances too, and thinking about this whole encounter between Bolin and Asami. If we dive into this in Pai Sho,
yeah.
Right?
I love this moment.
Like this.
Can I just also name that Bolin really worked my nerves this whole epised?
Bolin has been working my nerves this whole season.
Ooh, I am like, ooh, I just need this to end.
Yeah, it just feels like Bolin is really, really capturing men. Frankly, all of the toxic traits that a lot of men have, Bolin seems to have in this whole series. And I think it manifests when he's with Ginger in season 2. I think it manifests all in this season, especially in this encounter where it just feels like a little bit of mansplaining. I mean, I'm really good at this. But yeah, I think that there is no entertaining the possibility that Asami is good at Pai Sho here. I learned from Shady Shin, I'm really good. It's just like, you have no idea. You've never played Asami in this game before, and you're just gonna assume like there's the audacity, like, and yeah.
I'm glad Pabu jumped on the game board before he got a chance to win.
Yeah.
Right.
Right. So that's something I wonder if there's a connection. Let me ask you both this: is hubris, and audacity, are they in relationship, or is that just Bolin here?
No, I think it's definitely in relationship, right? Like, I think part of the rub, right, of this particular dynamic, right, is that it's okay to be audacious as far as like daring to believe, but being audacious and having audacity, there's a fine line that gets crossed, right?
Yes.
Where too much audaciousness creates this like, you got some nerve, and not in like the like daredevil sort of way.
Yeah.
I don't know where the line is. I just know that once the line is crossed, it's very, very evident.
Well, and I think, again, it goes back to what we learned, I think, at the beginning of this conversation, which is when the other person is diminished in our assumptions. And I really think that's when it becomes, that's that line, right? I can be like, well, I think I'm really good at this game, and I'm not optimistic about your chances, but that's one thing versus like, I'm really good at this and you don't have a chance, right? Like, it's like there's no acknowledgement or possibility that you could lose, and that is like this. I think that's what it is when there's a certainty, an element of certainty to it, right? That is when it becomes problematic.
And that's what I was at the beginning, the absolutism, like this idea of like, I'm the right one, this is the right thing.
There's no chance that nobody followed me.
Always a red flag.
There's no chance you can win.
Correct. And I think that's always a red flag. And I think that that's also, it points to hubris, right? When someone says, I'm the only one with the answer, this is how it's done. It's funny. I've been climbing a lot recently, rock climbing, and it doesn't matter how good I think I'm getting. There's always an 11-year-old who can do something I can't do. Right. And so, and I think that's a part of that is staying humble in those things. It doesn't matter if I like, oh man, I just did the best route of my life. There's always a route I can't do that an 8-year-old is like, just flies up. And I'm like, well, good for you. Like,
good for you.
And I think that it's nice to have things in our lives that, like, yes, we want to be supported, and we know we always need to know that we're enough and worthy of love. And that's an absolute thing that I think has to happen. And it is nice to also have other factors in my life that like humbles me, right? Like going on a 3-mile run, and I'm like, okay, I need to do this more, right? Like I like having those things that are like, hey, keep yourself in check. It seems like a nice little like a balanced thing to have. But yeah, one of the things I do like about the Pai Sho game is I love the concept that they are both right in the sense of they both have rules that they are swearing that is the correct way to play. And I love that both of them get checked on. Like, no, it turns out culturally there are hundreds of ways to play this game. And I'm like, I like that add-in. I like that fun aspect of.
And that's such a small moment in this, but it's so important because I think one of the things that I have learned more and more as I have been through school and I have been educating myself is that multiple conflicting things can be true at the same time. And that is really hard. Like, that's really difficult to hold in tension when you were so certain before.
Right.
And when you learn something that is also true that conflicts with your belief, it can be like existentially, it can like a crisis moment. It really can.
Yeah.
And this is such a small thing that is pointing to a much bigger lesson here. And I think that is something that is really a teacher for me in avoiding hubris, which is realizing that even though what I think might be true is true, there also can be things that are against that and counter to it that are also true, which is like, ew, I hate that.
Yeah. Same. I really like what you said, like that there are multiple ways that we have to be able to hold truths, and by holding the multiple truths theory, right, that helps us from getting overly confident, right? Like I can be just as right and someone next to me could be just as right
And just as wrong.
and therefore just as wrong, right? And what does that mean? And I think a good thing that kind of points to like that small game lesson being the overarching theme of the episode is like as Zahir is talking about the Red Lotus, and he's like, you don't want tyrannical world leaders, right? And you're kind of like, yeah, I don't. That's true. There are always going to be somebody, and it's like, let's kill him. It's like, whoa, wait, like. I understand your logic. I just didn't understand the outcome that you got to based off of your logic.
Well, and this is becoming one of my. It's a trope that we see in television a lot, and I know we lifted it up before. But this far leftist ideals, and I'm like, those are all things that I agree with.
That we
and
need.
Then,
we
and
need
then they're always
those.
like, and murder, and you're like, no. we stop before the murders. All right, like. There are other ways, but in television, it's always like this person who's got this really good idea, and you're kind of like, that doesn't sound wrong. Like, Zahir's not incorrect.
Amon wasn't incorrect,
bottom
right?
Ring, the bottom ring is suffering and needs to be freed, but he didn't do it with the help of the bottom ring, which I think is one thing. But then at the other side of it too, it's just like, and the murders, and you're like, no. But I feel like
you just dialed it back from murder.
Yeah.
I think we were almost there.
Yeah.
Well, and I think it's interesting too because Korra makes the same assumption as we do, right? As the viewer, and part of it is the way that it's written leads us to assume that that's what's going to happen, and that's what's problematic for me. Is Zahir doesn't say he's going to kill them. He says true freedom exists when will be without oppressive governments. And then Korra's like, but if you destroy them, we'll be in all disarray. And he's like, no, he didn't say that. He didn't say we're going to kill him.
But he does agree with that, right? So, which is one of those things where it's just kind of in that moment. I'm like, when she's like, but if that happens, then there'll be chaos. And he's like, yes. And I'm like, well, not necessarily.
Yeah,
everyone, we're jumping into a binary, and I think we can find some middle ground.
And that's what's problematic here is that they lead us into this binary. Because Korra could have been like, yeah, I agree. I don't like oppression. And then he would have been like, so you agree we want to kill everybody, right? And she would have been like, no, that's not what I want, right? And so I think, how do we? And I think this is why the vitriol of online debate within the fandoms is really toxic, because people fall into the binary trap of, yeah, I think Zahir was right. We really should kill all the oppressive No, you are so close.
But the Earth Queen is also not the right answer, correct?
But
right?
But yeah, we don't want to keep the Earth Queen around. Do we need to kill her to do that? There are other ways.
No, but like Nickelodeon.
Like we're not there yet.
We're not there yet, but like Nickelodeon.
Whoa.
There are some deaths this season that I'm like, Nickelodeon.
Impressed.
Yeah.
Color me. I was impressed.
That's some Are You Afraid of the Dark stuff. We're going back to the early 90s for this.
So I want to. There's so much we can unpack just in this scene between Korra and Zahir and this conversation with the Red Lotus. I want to point to one more thing, which the purpose behind the Red Lotus and how it began is really interesting to me.
Well, that just sounds like the White Lotus.
Well, it's interesting because like the White Lotus, especially for those of you who have already read The Dawn of Yang Chen, if not, I'm going to give you a very minor spoiler.
It's on my list. I can't run away from this conversation. I can't fast forward this. You going to spoil something for me?
It's a minor spoiler.
Ugh.
There is a lot of information that is interesting about how the White Lotus operates back in Yang Chen's time. in this book. And it's really interesting to me to put that in conversation with this, because the way the White Lotus operates then through Avatar: The Last Airbender, and then almost completely different in The Legend of Korra.
They are glorified mall security in Legend of Korra.
And we've talked about that, right? We've talked about that in season 1, and it's really interesting because that is definitely not how they've always interacted. And I think Zahir is right again. We're pointing to something that the purpose and the reasoning behind the organization shifted, and someone was like, this isn't right. And I think that's legit. So again, the idea of these shows continuing to say, we're going to do everything right except for kill people, is really frustrating to me, because it really helps train the audience, we as viewers, to see revolutionaries
as a binary.
As binaries, but revolutionaries as villains.
Yeah.
It helps when we see revolutionary action, what we really see is villain. And it's really I really struggle with that. Sorry, rant over.
And I mean, we talked no, I was gonna say, because we talked about this right in the Pride episode around, thinking about this idea of what villains actually point us to when we think about our consciousness. I think what ends up getting uncomfortable, right, is like everybody's kind of the villain in this situation, right? And so I think I have gotten more comfortable with understanding how Korra can be viewed as an op or as a villain, right?
Yeah.
Alongside it's just the battle of which chaotic good are we going to vote for, right?
Yep.
Or lawful evil are we going to kind of root for in the end? And I think that makes it easier for me to be like, oh, I'm not necessarily demonizing Zahir, because I'm like I tell you, I'm right up into the moment, he airs out of lungs. I'm right there up until that point.
Maybe also yeeting people into the fog of lost souls.
And yeeting people, well, is it a victimless crime? I don't know. Yeah, I haven't figured out what does a death in the spirit world actually mean? That also blew my mind. I was like, oh wow, so what's gonna happen to the body? Is it just gonna?
Yeah, I was still just chilling in that motel.
Again, I will refer us to the Dawn of Yang Chen for information on that. I'll not answer the question just to avoid more spoilers, but
please,
that question is answered.
Okay, good.
And so one of the things that this leads me to, as we talk about as the traditions of around the White Lotus and what it was to what it is, and the ability to change, and how much does hubris play a role into our inability to want to change the structures and systems and things that are around us, right? If we do we not acknowledge things that are wrong?
I think that's the hallmark of it, though. For me, that's the hallmark, the refusal to change one's positionality, or to believe that the only thing that could happen is your way being the only way for the rest of time, as if, needs don't shift. I think that's part of what makes hubris so dangerous, right? Is the inflexibility that it creates within you as a person, but also in the scenario and how it plays out. And it's also, it's why, right? If we think about towards the end, Zahir ends up with egg on his face, because when Korra's out the spirit world, she's not with them. She's on a boat towards the Earth Queen.
I'm on a boat.
Yeah.
Right. And, very Hannibal Lecter-X get up. But, but I think that's part of it, is at every turn, it's you can believe something has happened, but if you think that the only way you're going to do it is I've got to kick down the door, right? I've got to jump headfirst into the spirit world. I gotta, I'm going to dispatch my henchmen out, and, I'm going to get them with the element of surprise, as if they don't have a skill set or a team of people. Even though physically they were bested, other things happened, right? There's a lot of different enemies that Korra has made. You're not the only one.
Yeah.
Yeah, one of the other moments to me that feels like hubris, and this doesn't only happen in this show. I've definitely seen enough Westerns where it happens, but wanted posters, assuming that they're out of fame. Oh, look how famous I am.
Yeah.
Like,
oh, Bolin.
Well,
Must be a movie poster.
And so one of the things I hate in this is that he gets affirmation in that later on in this episode when they're like, we're just really big fans. And I'm like, God, can we stop? Can we not fill his head up with this? Like, I would really almost would have wished you were bounty hunters.
It's interesting.
But then also, did you see how he got the ick? How Bolin got the ick from it, though, once he got exactly what he was looking for?
Yeah, he was not super excited about it once it happened. Well, and that's something that's really interesting to me about this is thinking about when people don't like respect celebrities' boundaries and are like, your time is my time. Like, they're out to eat, minding their own business, and like, I'm gonna go all up in their business and say, hey, can you sign this? Hey, can we get a picture? Hey, can we do this? Hey, can we do this? And part of me is just like, as much as I want to do that with certain people, I don't think I ever will. Like, I might wave and be like, I'm acknowledging that I'm seeing you.
If you want to watch an entire movie based on spectacle and what happens when we focus on it, you can go see Jordan Peele's Nope. Because that is almost exactly, that is a major theme in that is, hey, what happens when we push things too far? And what happens when we specifically focus on the spectacle or the celebrity? And it is totally worth watching. So go check out Nope.
And that's that.
And that's that. That's my movie review of today.
So, can I talk about someone who's... It doesn't seem like there's a lot of hubris in this character.
It doesn't seem like they have a lot of hubris.
Yeah.
The barman.
No. But also, yes.
Okay. Who are you?
I was going to say Mako.
Yeah. Has Mako, like, shown growth this season?
This episode in particular is a shining beacon for Mako behavior.
Feels like he's really got it together, and I don't know how to feel. This is conflicting feelings for me.
He seems to be riding the logical train the whole episode. He talks Bolin down. He talks Korra down. He seems to be the voice of reason. He keeps notes in his logbook to make sure he doesn't make mistakes. Like, I'm just saying, this person is methodical and really considerate of other people and doesn't seem to overestimate his capacity to do things, or frankly, overestimate Bolin or Korra, or like, I'm impressed.
And he's certainly not underestimating Aiwei.
Correct.
And throughout this, right? So
yeah, you know, that talk about someone who's conflicted. Me having to rooting for Mako this episode, major conflicted. I'm even conflicted now, giving him props. And again, this goes back to, I think, what we were talking about when we were talking about the villain segment, right? Like, at the end of the day, this is a member of law enforcement, and this kind of like law enforcement being the rational, logical, methodical is not what's being reflected in our current political landscape.
Agreed.
And I wonder how the writing of that participates in a certain type of propaganda.
Well, it does. And Bolin
narrative.
Plays into it, right? Bolin's all of it. I love it when you go policeman. Is like, feels really dirty to me. Like, because
it just makes me feel real dirty. I like, ooh.
Well, and to me, this isn't policey. That's not what he's doing, right? What he's doing is something completely different. He's acting outside the law, actually, right? This is not policing. This is something completely different. And so I think that calling it that, again, is that propaganda, so to speak, that you're speaking of. I 100% agree.
I mean, the episode is called The Stakeout, right? Like, this is something that is, and I think it's similar to that binary. Is like, there are aspects of like wanting to do what's right and take care of people, and then there is modern day policing, which says it's doing that, but has shown us over and over again that it is not that. And we even see that in Korra at times, right? Especially in the first season. And so, but another person that I think that I don't feel like shows hubris ever is Asami. But confidence has to be there, right? Because for her, I'm always super impressed. she is navigating a fight scene in a battle with 4 master benders who are like throwing water around, and she is still finding a way she's like, no, I can be beneficial here. I can be supportive. I can be helpful, and always holds her own. And I think that there's a confidence that is required there, but I never see it drift into hubris. I never see her underestimate others in this episode. It's just she's figuring out the way that she needs to move forward, and I appreciate that.
I love that.
Yeah. No, she's great.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I wonder how much, right, is it because of the idea of how power works in that world, right? Asami is technically the only quote unquote normal one of the bunch, right?
Yeah.
No power abilities. And with bending being so, while it is, still in a very like rare thing, it's so accepted that those who have bending power feels power up and over, right? This is the whole Anana argument. I wonder if that's the thing that keeps Asami's bending and like hubris in check, is this idea of like the person, like as soon as you add bending to this equation, right, some extraordinary power that then creates a, for lack of a better word, God complex.
Yeah, I think you're right. And it's really interesting to revisit that Pai Sho moment, because this is what I think separates confidence and hubris. Is Bolin to me is the archetype of hubris here, and Asami seems like this is a confidence thing because Asami wins, right? Part of me wonders if the result of the Pai Sho matches determines hubris versus because she's like, I'm gonna smack you down too. Like she throws some smack talk down to Bolin after his response, and so but to me it's that feels more like confidence than it does like hubris.
When I think in our world, you can notice hubris come off a little bit more when someone loses. Like if Asami would have lost, because she was like, you almost had me. That like, I think you might win, right? Versus like, oh well, you're playing by different rules, or oh well, I got dust in my eye in this sports game, or I got hit with.
You sound like me.
I got hit with a blue shell, or else I would have won Mario Kart, but I got hit with a blue shell, right? And so, how often do we see people, myself included, justify the loss because I'm actually good, but this thing happened that is totally a part of this game and is a normal thing that I should have accounted for.
I feel called out.
Versus like,
that was a good game. Drag us.
Yeah.
But no, I think you're absolutely right. And again, you're not diminishing the worth of your opponent for the sake of your confidence.
Right.
I can trash talk and be like, I'm going to get you. Like, you have no idea what I'm bringing to the table. I'm literally going to beat you because I'm very competitive. Yeah. But I also don't if I lose, the minute that I would run to you're cheating, right? I am diminishing that person, that person just got the best of me, right? Yep. And sometimes it's about just understanding. Sometimes you get bested, and that's okay. Like, there are so many different random things that could happen to impact how things turn out. And I'm okay if I get bested due to chance or due to skill, right? But I'm not going to diminish that other person if I get beat. I might pout about it, but I'm not going to say that like they didn't earn it.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay, I have 2 more small things.
We got to go quick because it's almost break time.
Okay. I want Spirit World versus in here versus in Atla. There is a big conversation around when you're in the spirit world, you need to know where your body is in order to be able to return to it. We see that as a real problem with Aang, right? When I got to protect his body because if he moves, then he's not going to be able to find it. That happens multiple times. And Korra, when she goes in and out of the spirit world, has no issue going straight to her body. So I think my first question is this an evolution in spiritual training? Is this what is happening here that allows that change? And then that's the first thing I want to lift up. It's a question. I'm curious what y'all's thoughts are here.
Yeah, doesn't Aang's like body eventually get pulled to it? When Zuko has him, doesn't his like spirit just eventually just get like yanked to his body?
Yes.
Like even without Aang knowing where it is, it just kind of like happens. And so
Yeah.
I wonder if they've realized that like, oh, that's your spirit will find your body eventually. It's all right. Like I don't know.
Yeah, I forgot what caused that, but that was a question in the past.
Yeah.
And so like I just wonder if I'm curious about that.
Yeah, I just thought that maybe because the portal was opened and there's free reign, it makes it easier now to locate it between the world because of like as a consequence to the great convergence.
This is my new favorite theory. Thank you for solving that problem. Yeah, that solves a lot of issues for me. Great. Okay, next.
Cool.
Is I really want to acknowledge something that has happened recently that's very sad, which is we didn't talk about Lin and Su Yin, and the potential hubris on both sides there of, you know, Su Yin saying, hey, nobody can control the Avatar, and Lin saying, oh, I can try. And then vice versa, when Su Yin kind of does take control and goes behind Lin's back, and like, you have the hubris to go behind my back, and there's this interesting dynamic there. But I want to lift up the fact that the voice actress for Su Yin recently passed away.
That's right.
Due to a car accident, which is really sad. So I just want to be grateful for their life's work, and specifically for their work in this show.
Yes.
So sad.
Sorry, my cat just exhibited some hubris. Sorry. Yeah, so sad.
No, we'll sending good vibes to their family and
the Haitius family.
I hope that Anne knew the effect that her work has had on people, and so anything else we want to tackle before we move on to a quick break? Anything else we need to lift up in this episode?
Yeah, I mean, there's so many examples of hubris.
Yeah,
I just think that like the whole episode is a masterclass in it, and the next episode will be the summation of that teaching.
Yes, yeah. The big moment, it's not a big moment. It's a super small moment that makes me think of it that's worth lifting up is the shooing away of spirits when looking at the map.
I can't believe we didn't talk about that.
Oh, yes!
Like,
oh, my goodness!
Like the spirit is like, I know where that is, but it is not communicating that well. And they're like, go away.
That was on my list, and I didn't talk about that.
Go away. And you're just like, come on.
That's the worst one, in my opinion.
Yeah. Well, how often is that true that we do that? And I think that's metaphorical too, for the nudges we get in our instincts and our intuition from these instinctual learnings that we have gained and honed through our epigenetics and through our ancestors and through our heritage that we have learned and grown and gained, that we are just being like, no, I'm going to ignore that because that's inconvenient in this moment due to my lack of awareness, right? And that is just I am so glad you reminded us of that, because I forgot.
When we see that was too. In the series.
Yeah, it's such that's the one that I think you spoke about being like kind of competitive and talking trash. That's the one that kind of drugged me the most, because like we are taught not to listen to these instinctual urges, or because of society not valuing the spirit world before. Now that they have this gift, right, of open communications and fluidity, they still can't appreciate it because they're willing to shrug it off. For the sake, like, you opened the door for this type of realm and world to exist only for you to dismiss it.
Yeah. Yes. Oh, we could talk all day just about that moment. Okay. All right. Okay. We're going to have to. Okay.
I'm going to.
Okay. I think it's time.
Great. We'll take a quick break and we'll be back in just a moment.
And we're back. Thank you all for enjoying that musical interlude. We always love that. It's wonderful for us. We get a chance to, take a little bathroom break. But here we are. We're back. We're excited. We're with you. And Indira is still here, which makes it worth listening to. So
a lot of people are like, I don't need to hear about Ben's bathroom breaks. And they turned off the podcast.
Yep. But what we're going to do is we're going to go into, we have a series of 3 shorter segments at the end of the podcast. If this is your first episode, we have the first one, which is Twee and La, which is, these are the things that push us away from the episode and the things that pull us in. Mm-hmm. And as you all have theoretically realized from our conversation in previous episodes, is that most of the time we are not considering the writers we are considering the episode as it is, and this gives us a chance to kind of step out and be like, oh, the music, oh, the writing, oh, the art, the X, Y, and Z, and then everything else that we also want to do. But that's kind of what this segment is all about. So what for us, Indira, Sunshine, pulls us in or pushes us away? You feel free to go with either, but make sure you cover both.
Yeah, Indira, I'll let you start.
All right. So the thing that pushes me in is the characterization of Naga. I just love the dogness that is being displayed in Naga's bear dogness area. Like it, I think we think of these beats and we know we have like things that we orient and think of in our mom world, but like Naga is such a dog in this episode in ways that I feel like we don't often consider or take into note that like this is very much a pet. And I just like the playfulness of Naga, like Naga not just being a tool, but like just being a playful animal, like in the hotel room.
Yeah. There's 2 things that makes me think of. The moment I have a really big dog, so this really speaks to me, is the moment that Naga like turns around and their tail smacks Korra in the face is so real. Like, my dog is 120 pounds and like
zero body awareness.
And so like turns their face and then like smacks me in the head.
Moves the couch.
Like has definitely headbutted me before. Just like, so that moment I was like, oh, that's so real.
Or Naga in the hotel room.
Or in the hotel, like laying out, taking over the entire bed and just like neck going in this weird angle. I think I'm just echoing and agreeing with you that I agree.
Yeah.
Can't believe Korra didn't have snacks.
I have a cat, so it, our relationship is a little bit different. But I just, as someone who also adores dogs, I'm just like, oh, it just reminds me of just like why dogs are really cool and fun and cute. So that pulled me in. The thing that pushed me away, is kind of just Bolin. I think the way that Bolin is characterized, how vapid Bolin is becoming. It just, like, I think it's just, and again, this is what happens when we get influenced by power, but like, I found myself every time he kind of started on his, his haughtiness, I was just kind of like, oh, like, why? Yeah. So in for Naga, but a little bit out because of Bolin.
Yeah, here. My out is the fans of Bolin in that sequence. I just didn't feel like it adds much to this specific episode. I get that it's like, oh no, bounty hunters are chasing us, but I think they could have just like put real bounty hunters chasing them, and then that would have been more exciting to me than like the fandom aspect of it. So that was just
because it just reinforced the delusion kind of to me.
And we don't need that with Bolin. We don't need
no.
Yeah. And then that I think the pie show game and the concept of there's so many right ways to do this depending on where you are is just a really subtle reminder, but like a super nice one of like, no, like we can acknowledge that other cultures and other people, there's different ways to do things that are also correct, and I think that's a very important reminder. And so that moment pulls me in. What about you, Ben?
Yeah, I've said it before and I'll say it again. I think Zahir is too OP. And
like just too strong. It doesn't make sense that he's this good.
It doesn't make sense that he's this good. And I really struggle with it. And I've heard things that have helped the thought, but still doesn't seem to complete the gap. So being able to yeet someone into the fog of lost souls seems like that's it's just too much. There's too much. There's been too much spiritual things that have gone on that have not been possible, and then all of a sudden this guy comes along and can do, and it's like, are you like and maybe that's my hubris for thinking I know everything about the spirit realm in this world by watching this show, but I don't, to be clear, but
man, you are going to be disappointed come episode 12.
Yeah. But anyway, it just seems like there's a lot going on here that it just seems like it's I feel there was not enough, maybe this is it. There's not enough explanation as to why Zahir has these abilities for me, and that's why it pushes me away.
Well, specifically because he was a non-bender, right? Because all the other ones, you're like, it makes sense that they're this good because they were like we assumed that they were good when they got captured.
It has a full,
well, even
Unalak,
even the rest of the Red Lotus.
Yeah,
like like they were all benders prior to this, right?
Yep.
So them being good is like, yeah, they probably just were good.
Yeah, I would have been way more compelled by him being a master strategist and not being an incredible bender. Like again, like the whole narrative is of like Aang spending his life becoming a master in these elements, and then we have a master immediately upon receiving. Anyway, this has pushed me away and continues to do so. What pulls me in though is again the story of the Red Lotus, and the beginning of it and the reasoning behind it is something that I'm like all about. Let's do it. Let's just do it without killing people. But so I'm super into this, and I'm really excited that this is what's being talked about and it's needed, because I think that's what raises a lot of questions for the viewers of like, you're right, the Earth Queen is like, talk about hubris, y'all. Like, needs to be in check. And this is just putting a lot of tension that I really appreciate. So that is my push and my pull.
Good deal.
Twee and Law.
Well, let's jump into devotion, our moment to think about what we want to do in the real world. This time, we're talking about hubris through the element of fire. Ben, what you got?
Yeah, I felt dragged when you started dragging me. To
be fair, I did not specifically call you out.
Yeah, but you did. You did it without saying my name. I am a sore loser. And I've been thinking about this for a while now. And I'm realizing that the things that I say at the end of that are often said where I think I perceive it to be said in a joking manner, but I know that I'm not saying it in a joking manner. But I think I'm saying it in a joking manner at the time. And in hindsight, as I think about it, I'm realizing more and more that is not true. And I want to do better. And I want to be more aware of that feeling and why I feel the need to defend myself upon a loss, right? And I want to really take time, and there's ample opportunities for me. I have game nights on regularly, so I want to be very conscious and aware during those moments and really think about why I feel the need to either put people down or say something snarky when it's really not helpful. So I just want to be careful and thoughtful around losses this week. That's what I want to do.
Indira, what about you?
Yeah, I actually am going to, it's going to sound really, really backwards, but I'm actually going to work on my confidence this week. I am going to turn up the heat on my confidence, because I have been thinking, as we've been dialoguing, as well as just like in my own personal work, that sometimes I have a tendency to try to undercut people's affirmation of myself for the fear of hubris, but it's actually an act of hubris to dismiss people's affirmation of me. So in order for me to like not actually walk in this hubris that I'm afraid of, I have to trust people's affirmations and belief in me and not assume that I know better than what people have affirmed within me. Does that make sense?
I love it.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. So that is my goal for the week, is when people give me a compliment, to honor that I can have that compliment without diminishing their affirmation and their intelligence and their gift of perception for the sake of me trying to appear humble.
Here. False modesty, unbecoming of a leader.
For me, I get to foresee and be a part of a lot of meetings in my work that I get to do, and I think that I can have a tendency to dominate those things. And so making sure that I'm not the voice that always feels like they're the right voice, and making sure that I'm not diminishing the attributes and abilities of others because I think that I have the right answer is something I want to be hyper focused on throughout this upcoming week. And so that's going to be my practice.
Y'all, we're so good at this.
We
This
got
is
stuff.
so cool.
We got stuff to work on.
We do.
Let's talk gratitude. I'm going to go first and say Asami, just for all the things I talked about earlier, just the way that she shows up into spaces, and the way that she gets to be supportive of one another.
My confident queen.
I'm very much an Asami fan, so that's going to be mine.
Indira, how about you?
Yes. I'm going to give gratitude to the spirit who tried.
The spirit who tried. That little blue blob.
They did their
That
best.
little blue blob. You know, the little blue blob could have minded their business. The little blue blob didn't care, you know, really had no stakes in the game, but wanted to yield some information about their world and share it with, even though it was dismissed. So I'm just grateful for, you know, wanting to be willing to share in the world, because if I was a little blue blob spirit, I probably been like, that is earth world problems. That has nothing to do with me. Let me mind my business.
Yeah. This reminds me of a moment that we're going to get with Kai soon, where he's like, I'm going to help. And then people are just not listening. So, you know, that's coming up shortly. And that reminds me of that moment. Okay. For me, I am going to be audacious and be grateful for Mako. I think that, again, I said it earlier, but Mako is the voice of reason in this episode, which is like, I think that this team in particular with Bolin and Korra needs people that are willing to balance their precociousness and their audacity with logic and reason. And I think he does that this episode. I'm really grateful. I think his outlook really did a lot to keep them safe this episode. So I'm grateful for that.
Well, look at us, y'all. That's the end of another episode. Indira, thank you so much for joining us and being a part of this again. We always love having you on the show. Please come back more.
Yes.
We would love to have you again for season 4, or season 7 for us, but book 4 of Korra. If you want to remind the listeners, where can they find you? If all the things that you would like to share with them.
Yeah. So you can follow me on Twitter at Black Trauma Nerd. That's BLAQ Trauma Nerd, all together. Or if you are, just trying to figure out who is this nerd with all these degrees, www.imudofia.com.
Fantastic. And y'all know where you can find us, BNB_pod, on all of the socials. Feel free to like, rate, subscribe, review, do all of those wonderful things wherever you listen to podcasts. It really helps us out. Don't forget that there's Patreon available as well, where
cool perks.
You can join in on live episodes and everything else. So check all those things out. Once again, I'm Sunshine Mayfield.
And I'm Ben Pruitt.
And this has been Bending Not Breaking. Thank you for listening.
Bye.